one other which is currently live, and almost on a daily basis we have customers, you know, taking over some streets and trying to vandalize property, and the police has to be paid almost every day and deployed to these areas to protect property. Now, so that's the question I ask.
Mm-hmm.
What's your hope in how much can be recovered?
Yeah,
and how do we get that?
So, I mean, it requires going into a bit more specifics than perhaps we have the time and the patience for. But the truth is, if you look at the situation as it stands now, tracing assets is really about going after other real companies. It's not about just, you know, funds that may have been siphoned off to tax havens or in shell companies overseas. A lot of them are companies that are here employing people and running. So a lot of the money that was, you know, channeled through these related party transactions have found their way into UniCredits, UniSecurities, Topcore, Minch. There are at least 30 of these companies that are clearly indicated in the reports of having received significant amount of money, including in one situation where as much as about $70 million of liabilities that UniSecurities was owing became the responsibility of the bank, of Unibank.
Right.
And in that instance, Unibank is paid for these liabilities. So if you're recovering that amount, how are you recovering it? Are you recovering it by going after the person whose liabilities were settled, or you're going to... So it's very difficult, as far as I'm concerned, in the manner in which the receiver, and the receivers are made up of, you know, top professionals, and I'm in no way impugning their capacity or their professional expertise. I'm just saying that they have taken the path of saying we just want the, you know, this huge $1 billion or more back. Okay. But the money is not just sitting somewhere. You know, they are in companies we all know all around Ghana. Look at the Hoda, which is the real estate holding empire that the Dufour family constructed in Ghana. You know, a lot of assets. You know, so what are you going to do? You know, resolve these companies one by one. You're seeking multiple court orders to literally bring down companies, take up the assets, strip the assets off, and liquidate the assets. It's not a joke.
Guess what? Whilst the Bank of Ghana or the state may be pursuing this direction to look at the assets,
through the receivers.
Let's not forget that these entities also have clients.
Yes. Who also have claims on...
And once again, I can't help it. There is someone who puts millions into, say, UniSecurities. And I'm talking from, you know, the background of knowledge from my firm and what we
privileged information
from what we are doing for other clients.
Okay.
And they also, because they were asking for their monies and it was not being given to them because of the situation, they are also in court
and they placed lien,
and they are hoping quickly that they can also attack these assets. So there's competition for the assets, right?
Indeed, there are. And then we have the situation where, because Unibank claims that from July 2016 to February 2018, it was effectively blind because its IT system had been changed. And therefore, you know, the management were not completely privy to the information that was flowing through the bank, and which is why it provided a lot of these reports to the Bank of Ghana that have now been repudiated. Because it claims that, I have a view that it means, therefore, that the information that is available to even the receivers is tainted.
Who made them blind?
Well, they said they did a shift from T8 to T24 terminals. They did a terminals transformation of their software from one core banking application to another.
So it's their own wahala.
Indeed, it is, but but they claim, well, they claim it's the vendor. I presume it's the vendor's problem, but it's hard to say. So whatever it is, they're saying that the reports that they filed to the Bank of Ghana, which were not correct or up to scratch, the problem was due to the fact that their software was not fully up to scratch.
Okay. What of the period before that? I mean, this report.
So July 2016 to February 2018 is a long time to be blind. So the question I have is, how confident are we that even the information that the receivers are proceeding on is solid enough?
Okay.
So the simple point is that we need to have a view that this will take a long time as far as collecting the money.
That's right.
We have to have that view.
Great.
Right. And if we want something quicker, then we may be looking in some kind of what do you call it, financial intelligence systems to figure out if there were money laundering or things like that, where we can use the criminal process to recover funds.
Now, so that we don't forget, just a minute or so each to all of you about the cleanup. You know, the Bank of Ghana speaks of a cleanup, and the government also continues to repeat that it's a cleanup. What do you expect from the 1st of January when you have had about 20, at least just 20 of the 30 banks surviving the minimum threshold, that's the minimum capitalization?
So I could talk till tomorrow, but let me be very brief, as you've said.
In a minute.
One, this notion that Basel II and Basel III will save the banking sector is just ridiculous.
Thank you.
We already have very stringent paper regulations where most banks that are healthy are already, as far as their regulatory compliance is concerned, are way above minimum thresholds under Basel III even. So, capital requirement directive was supposed to come into play 1st January 2019 and supposed to change everything else. I don't think it's going to happen.
Oh, I see.
What we have is really the day-to-day management of the regulatory process. Who is being hired at the banking supervision department? What is the incentive structure like? Those are the things we need to hear. And they should talk about these grand schemes to transform everything, because we have a lot of those that don't work.
Okay.
So the day-to-day management is where I have a problem. I think that's where the cleanup ought to start from.
Okay. Why did you say thank you to Bright Ace?
Because Basel III, Basel IV, let's go to Basel 1001, will not stop a managing director of a bank creating a false debt.
False account.
A false account.
Yeah.
It won't stop it. It is the human beings at the banking supervision who ought to stop it.
And capacity.
Is it capacity or the capacity
Integrity.
to be paid to be blind? Which I've become agnostic. I think I'm a cynic. I think that that's the reality. It is criminality. And so to me, my 1 minute is this, that maybe there ought to be the checker of the checkers. The problem, at the heart of the problem we have is the complete collapse, either drug-induced or money-induced, of our banking supervision department. I know I'm going to get into trouble, but that's the reality. They either turned a blind eye or were blinded by other things, because there were reports upon reports telling them that this thing is happening, and they did next to nothing.
Okay.
And maybe, if you're right, we're doing proper financial intelligence, we should be tracing accounts of people in this country to see whether there's been any unexplained wealth.
That's where there's hope.
Right.
And Samson, this is part of my heartbreak in Ghana. This is possible. If we were doing a proper assets declaration process, all of these officials should have declared their assets by now. The Constitution says that if between one declaration and the next, there's assets that can be traced to you, and we ought to be prepared to look beyond the you, to people closely connected with you. And that asset cannot be ascribed to a reasonable source of remuneration or a gift, etc., etc. It is deemed to have been acquired unconstitutionally. Okay. And my interpretation is that the court can strip you of it. So we have little indications of legal backbone to solve some of these issues, but we are unprepared, unwilling, or unable to apply them. And that is at the heart of my heartbreak. Two, about information dissemination for 2019, Bank of Ghana. I see Bright's problem that they don't see, but the Bank of Ghana is talking. The governor is doing what if the Fed chair did in the US would cause the markets to shake. He's giving speeches. He's giving the directions. Some of his speeches that I've read seem to be indicated, but it gets no traction. Absolutely no traction. He gives a speech at the Ghana Institute of Bankers, and there's very little press coverage of it. So the capacity building, press capacity building, your financial reporters ought to take this report, break it down, and keep repeating. Maybe the Bank of Ghana itself needs to reinvent its PR scheme. That this is the social media world. It is time to start breaking it up into graphics and pumping it out there so Ghanaians at least can get some confidence. As for the information, I think that Bright is in a better position to determine whether the information is adequate or not. Okay. But there appears to be information, but the dissemination of it, Joy FM needs to have a desk that monitors what the governor says, because what the governor says should be critical to where the economy of the nation is going. Certainly. But he speaks, and it's just heard by the people there. So that's part of the problem.
So, Clara, the ordinary customer's appreciation is that $400 million is enough safety for him to be confident in putting their money in the bank and not be worried about what may happen. Not good?
I am not sure that customers taking this are that confident. I think that we all know that the banking industry runs on trust. And we all know that to some extent trust has been broken. Like Bright said earlier on, now when people go to the bank to withdraw their money and you get agitated. And even for those who haven't gone, still when they are sleeping, they are wondering whether their money is safe. So we have a problem. It means that the 400,000 hasn't done the trick. 400 million it has not done the trick. I think what would do the trick is really what Ace talked about. This is not a failure of laws. This is not passing more laws is not going to do the trick. What will do the trick is for the Bank of Ghana to wake up to its responsibility of protecting the public.
Okay.
And it will start by in-house, making sure that it holds its own officers accountable, make sure that they do the right thing. And I'm sure with time, the people will see that the Bank of Ghana has their back covered. Otherwise, I'm not sure that the talking is going to. It will also the other effect of it is that it may make people not want to invest any longer because the risks are too much. So, and also the Bank of Ghana, the notices, yes, but when there is a problem, you just don't issue a notice to the public, this person doesn't have a license. Do something about it because you have the power to do something about it.
They must rely on the police.
All right. All right.
But they're shutting down.
Amanda,
you can't stop the people from
Amanda,
operating.
how do you also feel? Maybe you feel differently about this, that increasing the minimum capital that the banks should have is a good way to go.
I mean, it inspires some level of confidence, but again, it's just about the endemic problem of, you know, theft. If we're going to be very honest about it, it's the endemic problem of the culture of the system, and that people can buy their way out of a lot of problems if they want. So, so although we're sitting on a table full of lawyers and everybody's saying that we don't need more laws, I think we might. In terms of the unexplained wealth, as you rightly said, the Unexplained Wealth Act in the UK has just started doing things, but you would need an independent body that sits outside government, that doesn't rely on being prompted by government, but immediately they get public tips about something, they investigate it, they independently claw back money for government, but government does not issue the warning that, oh, you should start this probe. Right. That's how you would handle this.
A former prime minister is going to jail, going to spend some 7 years, is it, for unexplained wealth. He couldn't explain it, and so he was sentenced to go to jail. Now, Ace, I want you to remind me, when was it the first time that you issued a statement as Occupy Ghana cautioning people about this gold collectibles trade?
Must have been, I think it was 10th August 2017. Okay. 10th August 2017, Occupy Ghana. Well, that was on the back of having seen Bank of Ghana notices about it, and the then second deputy governor issuing a statement. It was a very interesting statement he made to Parliament, that this is interesting, we haven't licensed them to do deposit taking. We know they are doing deposit taking. To me, that takes you straight to the law. Shut them down. Good. But we know they are doing deposit taking. But we don't have any evidence that what they are doing is wrong. That statement was inherently contradictory. And so that's what piqued our interest. So we set our legal team on it. Look, and they came back with detailed research in the law, and I think they also went on the ground and told us that something is happening that is amiss. So we issued a statement asking Bank of Ghana, SEC, and Minerals Commission questions, that this thing might fall under your jurisdiction. Have you investigated it? What are your conclusions? Why the buzz about it is not right. If this is a genuine business, that these people have found some hitherto unknown source of business and are doing great business, why is the Bank of Ghana issuing notices and talking down at them? Then you are interfering in the genuine business of a Ghanaian. So if you have no business there, then stay out and let them do their business. But if what is going on, as you claim, is actually illegal deposit taking, then we expect you to take action. It was ignored. We were insulted. Oh, Ghanaians, not all Ghanaians, but many Ghanaians love that. We just asked questions. We're insulted, and good. Then we just sat back and watched. And then it started unfolding. Then we felt like, the bad fetish priest who sat by the sick person for the good fetish priest to arrive. And but we saw, it's as if we saw what was happening. And
so by
literally
September, early September, when the SEC issued that direct order and said, close down immediately, did you feel vindicated then, or now you feel even more vindicated?
I don't know about vindication when Ghanaians have lost money. My worry is, why didn't we stop this thing when it started?
Yeah.
You know, SEC is good SEC stepped in. And you can't say that because they are too late, they should never have done it. It was late, but at least they took the step. Why wait till then? You see, if we don't address those issues, we'll keep on fighting the symptoms when there's an underlying sickness that we are not addressing. Why did it take so long? So we thought that SEC was a year and a month behind us in terms of ascertaining that this is a problem and we need to stop it. And to my mind, SEC could have stopped it. Bank of Ghana could have stopped it. Minerals Commission could have stopped it. Mineral Commission just issued a letter saying what you are doing is not what we have licensed you to do, so stop. End of story. The problem, however, is that a lot of these institutions have no direct enforcement powers. That is why we set up institutions like IOCO. And Amanda, that's why I'm fascinated by your idea about an independent body that could take some of these steps. We need to explore that in light of the constitutional issues, etc., etc. But that's why we have an office like IOCO. Yeah. Its role is that when these financial issues come up, they have the muscle. Because if I send a Bank of Ghana official to go and shut something down and they throw stones at him, what's he going to do?
But both the Bank of Ghana and the Securities and Exchange Commission, their laws clearly empower them to call the police for assistance when they order a closure and you don't comply.
In fact, it's even SEC. The SEC law is very interesting. You prosecuted for failing to close down.
Exactly.
Good. But they don't have the prosecutorial powers. It lands on the lap of the Attorney General. Bank of Ghana can actually request for prosecutorial powers under the law to do prosecution by itself. But I don't think that the Bank of Ghana is equipped with people who understand the prosecution game in court to do it. So they rely on the Attorney General. And that's the point. Unfortunately, people say you push the issue too much onto politicians. But the buck stops with the politicians, because when Bank of Ghana finds it and gives the information out, it is for the political power to say, police, move on. But they won't do it. The police may not do it. They say, we don't understand the transaction. Look, Samson, you and I were in this country when people of our profession were saying that there's a lacuna in the law. There's a gap in the law. And so I said, which gap? There's no gap. You can see the thing. It quacks like a duck. It walks like a duck. It looks like a duck. It's not a goat.
Yes.
No, but
you see,
but the Securities and Exchange Commission itself earlier was unsure.
I know.
It was unsure. It made that public that it wasn't sure that it had the mandate to regulate them.
I agree with you. You know, that came to us as a shock. We said, we are not the SEC. But even we dummies can see this thing that is a duck. Why is the SEC saying it looks like a cow? Or we don't know which animal it is. So SEC finally agreed with us that this thing is a duck. So we sat back and said, whoa, what's going on in this country? And nobody can tell me that the officials didn't know what it was. We have now become aware that from the start of this process, before it metamorphosed into a gold process, Bank of Ghana had done detailed investigations. Officials of Bank of Ghana, and you see, we should put these things out there. That I give them credit for. The reports and reports. In fact, if you look at some of the things that have been smuggled out into the public now, they actually went and bought some of the stuff. 4,000 cedis in one instance, 2,000 cedis in the other. They have dates. Shopping. They did that shop and ascertained that what is going on, stripped of all the hoo-ha, is basically deposit taking. Then what happened? Nothing. That's my heartbreak, Samson.
So those who are crying now, look, they feel that there's a reality that is dawning on them, very sad one, that they may not get a dime. They were giving promises to come and take their investments. It never happened. They were told to come for 50% or so. They were told to come for 15% or so. Then there was, now we are hearing about come for 5%. Guess what? They were also told to, if you wanted to terminate your contract, come and do so. And many people were interested in getting back their principal. And if you terminated the contract, you lost 25% outright. So that was money back to the entity. Now, what do you see? What do you see? Look in the crystal ball and tell me, even if you have to look that far.
I'm not sure.
Is this a hopeless situation?
I don't think I have those clairvoyant.
Should the government intervene as they are asking?
But I don't know if I have those clairvoyant powers. I being a person of books and letters, go back to when you went there, you are given a piece of paper to sign. I've made this point, let me say it. Before you put your money anywhere, can you ask some questions beyond the ordinary? The fact that you see a certificate of incorporation on the wall doesn't mean the entity is licensed to do what it is doing. In fact, sometimes the certificate of incorporation should tell you that it's probably not licensed to do what it is doing. The fact that it says it has a license from some agency, at least ask for it. If you're going to put 500,000 cedis in an investment, show it to your lawyer. Or is it that maybe you show your lawyer and say, hey, this is my client, they have 500,000 in legal fees. So you sign a piece of paper which says that the money you are using to buy a metal that doesn't exist, right? The money you're using to buy that metal that doesn't exist. If there's a dispute, you go for arbitration. And some of the governing law is the U.S. Patriot Act, right? What's in the U.S. Patriot Act? And what is its relevance to investing in Ghana? And you look at it and say, oh, wow, U.S. law, good one. Then you sign. And then, have you ever, check the internet. What does the Patriot Act say? There might be a synopsis somewhere. It is completely irrelevant and inapplicable to this situation. But you sign that piece of paper, and now you're caught in this situation. Crystal ball, only to the extent that there are assets available. And so the thousands of people, probably tens of thousands, are all going to get into a scramble. They are all unsecured creditors. So make first past the post. But are you going to go to court when you have an agreement that talks about an arbitration agreement? Or are you now going to go to court for the appointment of an arbitrator? Because they are not going to agree with you for the appointment of an arbitrator. So you're going to go to court first for the court to order an arbitration and for the arbitration process to start. Or are you going to go to court to say, we think that the contract is illegal? Maybe I'm giving legal advice here. That because it went over and above, it went outside its remit, and under Section 9 of the Companies Act, had no power to take deposits as a private company. The contract we entered into with them is wrong, and so I have a cause of action in compensation, also based on the triggering of the powers of the Registrar General. Right. Look, if we were proactive, the Registrar General should have stepped in by now. Absolutely. There is sufficient legal basis for the Registrar General to step in to first cause an inspection and then a court-ordered investigation to check what was going to determine that they acted outside their authorized businesses. And so the Attorney General will trigger, the Registrar General will trigger his or her powers and cause prosecution of the directors by the Attorney General, legal action on behalf of all the creditors and even the company to recover what has been taken out of them. Has there been an audit of these institutions ever?
Clara.
Where is the money?
I'm coming. Clara. He makes it sound so straightforward and simple. So what is going on?
It is that straightforward and simple. Really. When the issue like he started, the thing looked like a duck. It was quacking like a duck. It was walking like a duck. I mean, it was clear it was a duck. But you sit down and still doubt yourself as to whether this thing is a duck. There's a huge difference between a cow and a duck.
The customers disagreed with all of you.
It wasn't about the customers. So the issue really wasn't what the customers thought was happening.
They were getting their benefits for a period of...
It is not about the customers.
Upwards of 5 years. They were getting their how many percentages?
It was not about the customers. In every civilized society, and in a civilized society like ours, you have laws. You have regulators who have to enforce laws. It is the responsibility of the regulator to protect everybody, whether or not the persons even know that they are in danger. But the regulator should know, because the regulator is expected to have the expertise. And whether you even know or not, it was a straightforward matter. Was someone acting in accordance with the laws of Ghana? You have regulated industries. Was the person engaging in a regulated activity? And if they were engaging in a regulated activity, did they have the required regulatory license? The fact that it didn't fall here or it didn't fall, it's neither here nor there, because you can have a business that straddles several regulated agencies.
You have said so on this platform.
Yes. So if that happens, all it requires is for the various regulators to regulate their portion and collaborate. All the regulators, all the state entities, agencies have one common interest, which is the protection of the Ghanaian public. Okay. And so they can collaborate. So this issue wasn't really a very...
ACE had indicated earlier, you know, apart from Occupy Ghana issuing their statements earlier, the Bank of Ghana had issued cautions. All the others were saying things without acting.
Mm-hmm.
Are the customers, aggrieved customers, right in suggesting that the state can be fixed with some amount of liability in this? And that they have seen the owner of the entity, Menzgold, in handshakes and photo, whatever, with the president, with the chief imam, with the Asantehene, and all of that gave them confidence that this was good business.
Now, I can sympathize with them. Of course, you don't kick a person who is already down. But let's face it, I can sympathize with them and where they are coming from. But when they say the state should be fixed with responsibility or liability, who are they referring to? Are they really referring to the taxpayer? That you and I should cough up money and then support?
I don't think that's the point.
Let me finish. So when we are talking about whether or not we can fix the state with liability, well, it depends on what liability they are talking about, of course.
Maybe responsibility.
Responsibility, yes.
Responsibility, but not financial.
Liability for the money.
Okay.
What the state can do is to help them trace their assets. For example, like Ace talked about, the company's registry, you have EOCO, you have the regulator. The state can do everything that it can to bring them into account, to be accountable and to get the assets so that the people whose monies have been locked in there can take those assets. But
you
not
think they are
necessarily
chasing after the
liability.
wind in this circumstance?
Well, I wouldn't say they are chasing after the wind, because I still think like the banking situation, it should be possible to trace the monies and then the other businesses. Tracing is always a
But that's the
complicated.
burden of the individual investors.
No, but that
customers.
is where the state agencies, where they can, because if law has been breached, can help
But this
to
has
bring
been a
them
Ponzi,
in.
which meant that the same money has been used to pay people, then there's nothing left.
Okay, interesting. Now, Amanda, you represent a good number of these, Menzgolders, they call them now.
Hey,
and
Aggrieved customers.
yes, aggrieved customers. And you have filed a petition to the Attorney General?
To the President, the Attorney General, and FIC.
And asking for what exactly?
Just asking for some level of intervention, because let's speak in figures, since this is a finance show. Conservative estimation initially was that we had about 1 million customers of Menzgold. The figure, after talking to people within these departments who have spoken off the record, is close to 1.8 million Ghanaians. And the initial
more than all the customers of the 5 banks put together.
Yes. And then you have initially the amounts spoken about was $60 million has been put into this company in the last 5 years. The figure now from insiders within these organizations who would like to act but can't is in the region of $200 million in the last 5 years in an unregulated company. So
we are in the wrong business.
Yes. Do you see what I mean? And so the point is, if we're talking about, is it a duck, is it a this, in terms of what was it exactly initially, SEC is a professional body that is there for one thing and one thing alone. They have something called red flags. So as soon as you see something, a red flag operates, so you kick into place. Within the first week of Menzgold, meaning before $200 million was pumped into an unregulated company, the first week Menzgold should have been shut down for 3 reasons. The first reason is they'd opened up as a bank twice. The same people opened up as a bank twice, and then they come to you with a different name, and then you're trying to look into them. That's a red flag, because you're the same people,
They got them to
and you're trying to take deposits. Second issue, February of 2017, the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament comes out and says that, look, as of February 2017, we had a meeting with Menzgold and we told them that they're an illegal outfit. And so an illegal outfit as of February 2017 categorically is not shut down immediately. And then what I found, because a lot of the contracts I look at are 2018, when you have a business that's been going on for 5 years, guess what happens? In the first week, Menzgold would have found it very difficult to get a customer to even part with 200 Ghana cedis because they didn't know them, it was the first week, etc. With the passage of time, 5 years, nobody can say that they don't pay 10%. With the passage of time, people were depositing upwards of $6 million US per transaction. This is financial. So the government should, in my estimation, be involved, not for the taxpayers to pay money, but in terms of issuing the public with a full report. How in Ghana, we're talking about 1.8 million people invested in an unregulated company, upwards of $200 million, and you don't think we need a report on how this happened on our shores and what we can do to prevent it? Because Ghana is not a destination for money laundering.
The finance minister,
and it's not a destination.
The finance minister, and by extension, government, you have also heard from the parliament, the appropriate committees of parliament say, we're sorry, we can't help you.
Members within the Finance Committee of Parliament have also come out to say intervention is needed for seizure, because what happens in different parts of the world where people are considered victims and not greedy is, you know, words. They're considered victims and not greedy, as because, you know, it takes a scam to scam you out of millions of Ghana cedis, because, you know, it takes some time to earn that money. Right. So it takes a very sophisticated operation to scam you out of that money. So what happens in other parts of the world is that they ensure that if anybody gained financial benefits by taking money away from other people, you make that person wish that they had not engaged in the scam, because they end up worse off in terms of properties seized, everything seized, and things abroad seized. So we're not talking about greedy, you know, the rhetoric.
There's a customer who is getting judgments, you know, in Kumasi, and is levying it on one of the properties. Why?
Yes, and the audacity of the CEO.
Why are the other customers not doing that?
No,
why
the other customers are going to court, and they are going to go through the thing, because another issue is Menzgold is saying that this matter is in court, therefore, you know, everything in the universe must stop. And, you know, nothing must be frozen, and as much time must be given to them to take money out of the country, whatever it is. So this matter is in court only because Menzgold is saying that you shouldn't have stopped our good business. But SEC the next day came out with a statement and said, we never stopped you giving back money to people. All we said is that you cannot take in new depositors. So ultimately, this is a public interest issue far bigger than GFA, because more people were involved. And yet with GFA, within the first day, before the CID file was open, they froze everything, froze all accounts, earmarked buildings, said, and that is the proper thing in a way to sometimes do, because you want to assess what's going on with this company.
Have you had any response from the Attorney General?
I'm meeting up with Deputy Dami next week about this, but I just want to reiterate the fact, in the Murdoch Ponzi scheme in America, what was the initial red flag is that you can't give like 10% every month. It's just not in the financial markets to give like the same amount every month. So that was the initial red flag. And then when it was discovered that it was a Ponzi scheme, governments did not spend a penny of their taxpayers' money, but they showed all future Ponzi scheme dreamers that not on our territory. They retrieved everything, they arrested people, they issued alerts to trace money in different countries. And this is accountability, because why on earth do we have FIC, EOCO, if they're not supposed to do this?
Are you hopeful of any action at all? Because look, if the finance minister has spoken, if you have heard, you know,
the finance minister
people
is one
who matter
person
within the government say, we're sorry, we can't help you.
Well, to tell you the truth, this has become bigger than Ghana, because anytime money moves from our shores, which we have been told quite a lot of it has, this is international jurisdiction. So if Ghana is not concerned that our citizens, so much money has been taken from our citizens, people within the international community where this money has gone to are interested in how this money landed in their country.
In some 30 seconds, do this for me. Recap exactly what you expect the intervention to be. What do you want them to do? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. The first intervention is to issue a full report on how, you know, so much money was deposited in a non-financial institution.
Number 2?
Number 2 is to make sure that in future, within the first week of a company having so many red flags, because they tried to open up as a different, then they changed the name, and then they took money a different way. And the third red flag is when Bank of Ghana and everybody was chasing Menzgold.
Okay.
You know what they did?
Right.
They changed the strategy. 95% of depositors' money went into Brew, 5% went into Menzgold, and they still stayed opened.
Okay.
So the second thing we would like to happen is that we are not necessarily like a welfare state, but government is accountable to over 1.8 million Ghanaian citizens. It is accountable because so much money was pumped into an unregulated company. It is accountable because it can search and seize and not spend a penny of taxpayers' money and make it a good example for the future.
All right. Thank you very much. We have to end here, but of course, Bright, give us a minute of your impressions of what should happen. Yes. Yes, we have to end this here.
No Menzgold discussion.
You give us a minute of your impressions of any hopes for these customers.
Well, I have a detailed comment about the whole issue. I feel that Amanda is absolutely right that there are consumer protection obligations of the government that in any jurisdiction will prompt it to act in a manner much more involving than it has been. Second, we have a situation where some of that, if indeed the way that the company has been treated, which is that it's an illegal company, it's a Ponzi scheme, etc., that some of the funds and the way that they've moved around constitute problems that require investigation, in the sense that some of that money could have gone into illegal activity. So there is a money laundering, anti-terrorism, a whole range of and a whole suite of other organized crime investigations that ought to proceed. We have a situation also racketeering. We have a situation also where the organization purports to trade overseas. If it purports to trade overseas, then the money must be coming in somehow. It has bank accounts. Those banks have KYC obligations.
Right.
And those banks ought to be investigated because the money was moving in and out somehow. So I don't see how anybody can say that, you know, we can't have a thorough investigation, we can't issue a thorough report about this. All that work has to be done.
We can't freeze anything.
No, that, you know, more important than everything else though, I think this Menzgold thing exposes the whole society and not just Menzgold or its customers or particular regulators, etc. I think there was a failure that goes beyond any one actor. And the reason I say that is very simple. When the Menzgold brand building process was ongoing, we couldn't have had this discussion. They had powerful people in society endorsing them. They had, you know, important institutions like, I think at one point, EcoBank issuing bank cards. I don't know whether those were fraud or not.
No bank did that. They designed it themselves.
They designed it themselves. So why was there no investigation? Because that's absolute fraud. You issue a MasterCard branded in Menzgold's name.
I don't think
you issue EcoBank cards branded in Menzgold's name. And this were being circulated all over the country. What were the security services doing?
You came through the airport today. They still brand the trolleys.
I mean, what were the security services doing?
That's
outright fraud. This is forgery.
Okay.
We also have a situation where...
Did you just hear Ace?
What did you say?
The trolleys at the airport
are branded.
Yeah, because they pay for it. So I presume that they still have the right.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't take them off.
So some of the money went to the Ghana Civil Aviation.
Okay, exactly.
Okay, so now conclude. I'm sorry, but you
I'm surprised that I don't have the time to go through, because I think people also want to understand what's happened. But the truth of the matter is
we need a report.
We have a situation where every signal about Menzgold in a serious society will have led to the organization being legitimized earlier on, even without government intervention. When Menzgold started, it had a Swiss Gold Global affiliation.
Which was proven to be fake.
Well, no, they had it until 2016 when it was revoked. But the truth of the matter is that just this year, Swiss Gold Global itself was shut down by South Carolina regulators on securities fraud for trading without a license. Now, my argument is that if the South Carolinas could do it, what took SEC so long? Because we knew one of the problems that arose was regulatory confusion because of the fact that they had some argument, you know, they had some room to argue that we're not taking deposits because we're not involved in the deposit taking business anyway. Ghana, you know, there was back and forth, that created more confusion in the minds of people. The truth of the matter is, if you have an investment contract, it's a security. Why? Because there are three basic principles. One, there must be someone other than the investor whose skill is the profit is dependent upon. The primary intent of the contract should be profit, right? All of those terms were met. in these investment contracts. So the fact that the Securities and Exchange Commission had to wait so long to determine that it had to intervene shocks me. There's absolutely nothing. You don't have to trade in the secondary market for an investment contract to be a security. Absolutely not.
Okay.
And so my view is that we have to understand why those failures occurred. We have to understand why those failures occurred. We also have a situation where even when we were having these challenges around SEC telling them to give them documents and refusing to give them documents, they were refusing to activate the law to go to court and compel the production of documents.
Right.
When the enabling laws enable them to do that. And why didn't they do it? So we don't have customer lists. If you have 1.8 million people on your books.
More than registered taxpayers.
You know what is interesting? The amount of software capacity that you need to manage 1.8 million whatever. It's not what Menzgold is doing.
Okay.
This is a company that cannot draft a contract. So seriously, you should look at those contracts.
Yeah, Fiction Act.
Yeah, you should look at those contracts. They are inherently contradictory. Because on the one hand, they say they are trading the gold on your behalf. On the other hand, they are a kind of agent. And so it's almost impossible to decipher what actually the contract means. Okay. Now, if you have such a situation, and you have situations where the company continues to insist that we are not regulated, and you have people still sending money there, why would you send money to a company that is proudly saying, even though I'm dealing with your money, I don't want to be regulated? Isn't that a signal on its own? Why would a company shy away from it? Because everywhere else, having regulatory status is one of the
But subsequently, they said, look, we are willing to submit to your supervision and regulation. So guide us. What should we do?
No, but why would customers say that we are comfortable with a company not being regulated by the primary regulator in the organization?
Are you suggesting that, but for the intervention of the SEC, Menzgold would have gone down as it is doing now this fast? Because as we speak, it will still have been afloat and paying dividends to its customers.
You never know.
But the way it works is
but the day SEC, the day SEC intervened is the day they stopped paying depositors. That alone is a sign that why did you need new depositors to come in in order to pay if SEC allowed you to pay?
So the SEC helped them to get some legitimacy in evading their responsibility.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Samson, the banks that were collapsed, they were honoring checks until the very day that they were shut down.
Right.
So the fact that someone is, then we should, literally, you can't, that's why the financial sector is such a complex industry.
Okay.
The fact that there are people.
You don't think there should be any government intervention, and there's no faith if they try to sue the government agencies that should have acted and didn't do?
We don't.
In 30 seconds, I'm
No,
going.
I think that there is the government has a consumer protection responsibility.
Okay.
Which in this country is a bit complicated, but still exists in various forms.
Okay.
Thank
you very much, Asan Kuma, Amanda Clinton, Clara Berry, and Bright Simmons. This has been very enlightening. We'll be right back to deal with the second segment of today's discussion. Don't go anywhere.